All right, I am at SIG, at a top secret R&D range here at SIG. I'm with Andy, who, what is your job here?
I'm a product manager with Defense Strategies Group.
Okay, that's pretty rad.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So with Defense Strategies, what we have in front of us are weapons that are already being employed by the military, ones that potentially are being considered for being employed and used by our forces. But there's going to be a huge leap forward in our capabilities because of these weapons to ensure that we are the most lethal fighting force on the planet, to be able to beat and destroy our peer or near peer adversaries. It really often comes down to the equipment that we use in combination with the people that we have. And we are going to be so far ahead of absolutely everyone else on the planet because of these. And I'm going to tell you why. All right, Andy, besides having super pretty stuff on the table, I want to get into the background, the history, why the military. We've been at war for 20 years.
Sure.
There's been rapid acceleration in technology and capability, max effective range, muzzle velocities, chamber pressures, which rounds we're using. But we learned a lot of lessons both in Iraq and Afghanistan, and that really pointed to some missing capabilities, and which will fall heavily into this category. But we also experienced, with the weapons that we were using at the time during this very long war, dealing with weight, max effective range, limiting factors.
Sure.
Recoil Magazine did this really cool, comprehensive review on the machine gun, talking about the need for a lighter machine gun that has a way further capability in being able to accurately engage targets. They specifically talked about a valley in Afghanistan called the Uruzgan Valley. In 2008, I was part of a convoy escorting the Czech Special Operations to a firebase called Firebase Anaconda. The Uruzgan Valley has this long, wide, open valley that has huge, steep mountains on either side. It's about 2,000 meters mountain peak to peak, and down below there is this open plain. You get lit up the whole entire time from these ridge lines. And besides an M2 machine gun, besides a 50 cal, there is nothing that we're going to be able to use. Like, this is kind of pre-300 Win Mag. Yep. Like, we just didn't have the capability or the rate of fire to be able to accurately engage targets that were scuffing us up. And which comes into a capability gap. Now, when we go through here, each of these weapons are filling a specific requirement and a niche for the military. So what do we have in front of us?
So starting from left to right, we've got the XM7. Which is
so pretty. This is the prettiest gun.
You're not lying.
No, it's not.
It's pretty good looking. Yeah. So the XM7, the XM250, and then the LMG-M.
Okay. Now, this is a product. This is an awarded contract to the military.
Correct.
And who's getting this right now?
So this is being fielded to the Army.
And some huge changes. One is the ammo.
Sure.
So here we have a 6.8 hybrid.
Correct.
And this bad boy is compared to like a 55 to 77 grain 5.56. This is a big change.
Sure is. Yep.
And the biggest change really comes down to that max effective range and energy carried at distance. So that kinetic energy, how does that bullet still carry enough oomph downrange?
Sure, yeah, and I would say, as proud as we are of these systems, I think that round right there, that hybrid round, is really the key technology to jump both of these things forward. Yeah. So basically speaking, that round right there, that hybrid cartridge, most of the time when you have higher pressure rounds, so higher pressure, more muzzle velocity, which gets the effects you were talking about. So with that cartridge right there, a lot of times if you get to around 68,000 or 68K PSI, that's where you start, in traditional brass cases, you start to get that failure. Gas leak, crack cases, popped out primers get down into your trigger mechanisms. Yeah. Now your selector and all that sort of stuff doesn't work as well.
Been there.
Yep, for sure. Everybody has. It's always a crowd pleaser. So by adding that steel base to the bottom, we were able to proof that round in all of these guns up to
redacted. Okay.
So basically, what you're getting out of that round is 350 feet per second more regardless of barrel length. So to bring that into what we would like to call a bellwether round, the 175 grain Sierra Match King in 308. You know, out of a 16-inch barrel, you're getting anywhere between 2580 to 2650. With a 16-inch barrel, with that hybrid now, you can get up to 2980.
Whoa.
And out of a 20-inch barrel, you can get out to probably like 31.
Okay.
So you're getting essentially short Win Mag performance out of that 175 grain Sierra Match King because of the bottom of that bullet.
Yeah. And the end user, the everyday soldier, like that infantryman, is going to have that huge jump in capability.
Yeah.
So when we talk about like our adversaries, standoff is one of the most important things in warfare that we can ever talk about. That is the ability from one person with one capability and range to engage another target, and that target can't engage them. The distance between those two is standoff. So if I'm shooting a 300 Win Mag and somebody else is shooting a M118LR 7.62x5.1 175 grain NATO bullet,
Sure.
I'm going to have a standoff of 200-300 meters.
Sure.
So my ability to shoot them with the 6.5 Creedmoor, 300 Win Mag, 6.8 hybrid gives me a significant standoff over literally every single one of our current adversaries. They're just flat out overmatched.
Correct.
So when you start getting up into, like, next to our right, we have what?
So this is the XM250. This is the belt-fed squad automatic weapon now, replacing the M249.
We've had some time with the 249.
Sure.
Going through schools with it. I actually brought my Special Forces weapons handout to every single student as an 18 Bravo. So I was like the hairy-handed knuckle dragger
Sure.
that went through the small arms school. And playing with the 249, my first deployment in Iraq, the 240 and the 249 were staples. And those weapons have such a long heritage, and like they're battle-tested, battle-proven weapons.
Well, absolutely, yeah, they've been workhorses for sure.
The 240 especially, like first time I ever sat on an open bolt machine gun in the back of a Humvee with a 240 in front of me, like I felt invincible. That weapon designed in 1958, adopted by the military in 1977, shooting that 7.62, like that's a great bullet. Like it won us a war. It kept the Cold War at bay. But that is something that we have been using since 1977. Here we are, 2024, needing to I want to have such a powerful capability that when our adversaries look at us, like they feel overmatched, they know they're overmatched. That standoff is so powerful and so significant, like they want nothing to do with an American soldier with one of these weapons in their hands. Like that's our goal, right?
Yeah, I would definitely, deterrence is definitely one way to go. And if they know they can't win, then hopefully they don't.
So moving next to the right, our machine gun.
Yep, the LMG-M. This is the 338 Norma Magnum belt-fed machine gun.
338 Norma Magnum.
Yes, sir.
That's kind of fun to say.
It is.
Yeah. So a capabilities gap. With the idea of standoff, this can be caused kind of like from three different ways when it comes to when we look at a deficit or a delta, an area of capability that's missing. We'll just use Afghanistan or Iraq. You think of Sadr City, Ramadi, Fallujah, or you go to battles like Firebase Anaconda. You look at what happened to HKIA, where literally dudes are like running the base almost 3 years ago to the day today. And those 240s and 249s in both dedicated positions and with fire teams, those are really heavy. When you look at the M2 machine gun and the 240, when you're starting to send somebody up a mountain in Afghanistan and they're having to carry a weapon that has a specific range capability. So you're in these three categories: weight, overall distance and accuracy, and then I think equally important is the way that thing can be implemented, can be used tactically. In those three categories, inserts a capability gap. So in Afghanistan, you're getting lit up by somebody 1,500 meters away. you have two options. You can try to engage them with the 240. You can engage them with the M2. If you're going to be dismounted, that limits you to one option, which is the 240. Can we talk about weight, overall accuracy, max effective range, and muzzle velocity, and kind of the implementation tactically, how this could change the battlefield?
Sure, that's a lot.
Yeah, no.
I'll start chipping away at it.
Yeah, take one at a time here.
So in the configuration, you see it right here. It's got the 24-inch barrel with the suppressor on it. This right here is around 25, 26 pounds, which is essentially 240 Bravo. With the capability with this 24-inch barrel, muzzle velocity probably around...
Redacted.
So now you're talking definitely the engagement distance that you were just trying to overcome with a firearm that's the weight of the lesser of those two options, but with potentially the stopping power of the larger of those two being the 50 cal.
So it has the range capability of the 50 cal. It has the weight of the 240 and accuracy of, I mean, like, to be honest, we have enough real estate on this Picatinny to, put variable power optics on there. If you're going to be shooting out to 1.5 miles, which we're capable of doing here, you can put on some magnification and start, sending single rounds pretty accurately into a point-specific target.
Yeah, correct. And the selector on this, the first position is auto because it is a machine gun. Second position gives you a semi-auto capability. So instead of trying to time that bolt carrier group riding back and forth to get that single round like some of the other systems that don't have the semi-auto capability, you can actually select that. And so now you've got ammo conservation, you've got a decreased beaten zone, or the accuracy you're talking about at a greater distance.
Yeah. So fielded in consideration for selection. How does that process work? We'll get into some of the other, additional capabilities, but I think it's super important for people to understand. It is, I think, one of the most difficult and rigorous processes to have a weapon be selected by the military as the weapon of insert the requirement. So first, let's start from the requirements. Like, how does the Department of Defense say, hey, there's a capability gap and we need to fill it? What manufacturers can create the product to fill this capability gap?
Sure. So there's a long history with this one. I'll begin at the beginning. It's as good a place to start as any, and then just kind of jump in as we get going. So for the capability gap in 2015, I believe the Rangers did a capability study of the .338 Norma Magnum round to see what it was. SIG started building the LMG-M back in 2016. In 2017, SOCOM issued what's called a sources sought. Essentially, that's a net call. Hey, this is me to industry. We're looking for someone to provide a .338 Norma Magnum machine gun in and around 24, 25 pounds, 24-inch barrel, 2,000 meters plus capability, and 500 to 600 rounds per minute rate of fire.
So that initial go to market, hey, here's the requirements that you have to meet. But they're not telling you what is the operating system. They're telling you barrel length, max effective range. They're giving you requirements, but they're not telling you how to do it.
Correct.
So everyone in the industry then looks at this requirement and says, I'm going to try to build this. And the ones kind of that think they can then bring their best product to compete for that contract. So if we wind back to already fielded and being employed weapons, if we look at the SIG pistol, I got to see the environmental tests that pistol went through, the competitors that it went against, and the literally millions of rounds that were expended to try to determine which one was the best. There were some manufacturers that thought that they had a shoe in. I get irritated, and I'm kind of passionate about the process because this goes down to the soldier. This is going to be handed, this weapon is going to go into an American soldier's hands, and one of our brave young men and women that raised their hand to serve, to protect this beautiful Constitution in this republic of ours, they got to go down range with this piece of equipment. So I get mad when there's they won because they had good lobbyists. They won because they were the lowest bidder. They won because insert whatever like disparaging remark they have, because it's ignorance of not understanding the process. The process to win these contracts is insanely difficult. And when you look at this machine gun specifically, the ones that stepped up and said, okay, I'm going to put a product for consideration, like these are some of the best weapons manufacturers in the world. And it's how many rounds do you think you guys have put through this in the testing, creation, currently trying to improve? That's a pretty expensive bullet, .338 Normal Magnum.
Sure, for the ease of math, you could say $5 a round. For this, up to our Gen 4, which is the current submission to SOCOM, which is in contention, probably around 1.1 million rounds of testing and development has gone into this. And I'd say probably about 500,000 of those are the actual program ammo, which we use to optimize these systems to what they're going to be actually using in the field.
Okay, so it's like just ammo alone. We're talking 5-point-some odd million dollars
Sure.
of ammo.
Yes.
And then when you look at engineers, machining, tooling, and I'm sure in this current configuration, like this handguard may not have originally been aluminum. Working through different material to make sure, because we're fighting for weight and we're fighting for accuracy. And those two things are forever competing against each other. Obviously, if you have an unlimited amount of weight, like the 50 cal, like you can put together a pretty robust, heavy thing that can shoot a heavy bullet out to a very far distance. We want to be able to take that same capability and put it into an individual soldier's hands that can run up a mountain. That's what we have here.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just from a portability standpoint, so if we conservatively say, the new tripod is about 34 pounds, 25 pounds here, just rounding it up for easy math, call it 60 pounds, 100 rounds of ammo at 11 pounds a piece. You can get a gun and tripod and 200 rounds of ammo for the 50 cal receiver in one barrel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. The 50 cal is 100 years old, the M2. I love that gun. I stole when we evolved past the headspace and timing
gauge.
I still have the headspace and timing gauge, and it's hanging from my lamp on my desk. As an 18 Bravo, I still have the Mark 19 headspace and timing gauge. And I look at those every single day, and I kind of smile, and I don't think anybody like currently, unless you have plenty of gray hair in your head, appreciates or understands like how arduous it was just to get ready to set up for a QRF. Talking about big, huge jumps in technology from that M2 that's 100 years old, on the accuracy side. So real estate, we have thermal imagers, we have lasers, we have night vision in front of the optic, behind optic. Some of those, lots of people I think we've evolved a lot in GWAT. We got a ton of real estate here.
Yes.
What can we do, and how accurate is this as a machine gun, where we can, obviously switch to single rate of fire? What are we talking about? What can we put on here, and how accurate, and what kind of middle of angle hold does that have?
Yeah, well, one of the things is we wanted to have this be capable to be set up by the end user, right? We don't want to presume what they're going to want to do and then design it around what we think would be best, right? Depending on mission set, environment, all that sort of stuff. They get to choose that, not us. So yeah, so we do have a fixed set of rail back here. We do have a piece of rail that opens on the side opening feed tray cover. Back here we've got a steel insert and this pin, and what that actually does is sucks that back into the same position each time, so it's nice and tight. So return to there is within a minute. And then we've got this fixed rail here that can flop to the side out of the other way to do a barrel change. So like you said, you can mount your inline enabler up there, your I-squared, your thermal. You can have a red dot back here. Because of the versatility of this gun, if I am going to take it in on a vehicle, then I would probably want my spade grip. And trying to get behind a magnified optic from back here, that eye relief is not quite that generous, right? So if I run my red dot and I put a magnifier back here, that just gives me all sorts of options. With the 300 grain OTM out of a fixture on semi-automatic, we're around, I would probably say 2 minutes. That's average mean, and then on burst, right around 4.
Okay, that's pretty rad.
It's pretty good for an open bolt machine gun.
Yeah. When I went to Ranger School during Benning phase, some must-pass moments were assembly and disassembly. Like in 18 Bravo, the Special Forces Weapons School, we had, I have my book here, but I have the Leader's Guide Manual, and I have, like, in the student handout, your must-pass moments when you get in here, like, okay, this is all of the malfunction stoppages, here's all of the issues that you're gonna have. You had to memorize every single one of these. And for some weapons that had, like the Beretta, that locking block, you shoot X number of rounds. I would, as 18 Bravo, especially as a junior, it was my, like, hey, go fix this gun. Like the grunt that would drag his knuckles over and then hand you a broken Beretta, and I'd sit there and flicks to the locking block, hand it back to teammate, and off you went. There were some inherent problems. And when you've shot 1 million+ rounds out of this, when you look at shortcuts to malfunctions, how many malfunctions are we seeing out of these in current kind of test form?
So the Army doing FAT, the first article test on these, we'll talk about the 250, put 20,000 rounds through 4 guns. And of those 4 guns, each one of them experienced 1 malfunction in that 20,000 rounds. That might have been that was the rifle. That was the rifle. My technical advisor told me that was the rifle. For the automatic rifle, for the 250, it was 1 stoppage in every 8,000 rounds.
So one stoppage in every 20,000 rounds and 1 stoppage in 8,000 rounds.
Correct.
That's madness.
It's pretty reliable.
Like that is, I think you have, if you're a shooter, if you're in the military and you hear like 1 stoppage in 20,000 rounds, like that doesn't really compute in my brain, because that is insane. 1 in 8,000, absolutely impressive. So talking about the 338 Norma Magnum and the 6.8, if you look at the 7.62, which kind of would sit right here, and then our 5.56, which would sit right here, there's from 5.56 to 6.8 hybrid, this bullet is carrying an amount of energy in comparison to the 5.56, it's apples and oranges.
Correct.
This is not an M4.
Correct.
This is not just range capability, but more specifically energy. Like, you have an effective range that is double an M4.
Well, I mean, definitely overmatch, and not just that, but when we start talking about that speed, we talk about all sorts of advantages to the shooter, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm going faster, then I've got a flatter trajectory. When you remember the old ballistic diagrams, If I zero at 25, I'm close to 8 inches high at my max ord. Whereas, if somebody's behind defilade or cover, they're definitely much smaller than that. So you need to know your hold off. So with something like this, there's going to be less hold offs, less environmental interference. So there's a lot of net gains to it. Yeah.
So you kind of blew through some pretty powerful things in environmental consideration. So when you look at that max ord, the arc of a bullet and how that thing performs, if you're looking like a 30-06 or a 308, you have this very clear, large umbrella shape. The top of it is how high that bullet's going to travel, which is the max ord.
Sure.
And your predicted range is then, once it reaches that peak, at what ranges does it intersect each of those distances as that bullet travels down and ultimately impacts in the ground. This is like a laser in comparison.
In comparison. Yeah.
So like if you did a side by side of these arcs with one looking like this one looks like this. Like, absolutely there is still an arc, but in an overlay of these two, it is significantly different. In wind influence, we're a 308 in comparison to a 6.8 hybrid. I know some of it's like sensitive stuff, but we're significantly less influenced by wind considerations. So I'm like, would love to tell you like, oh, this one is like half of it, but like, redacted, undisclosed. Is sick in this this recoil magazine, and you're going through some data in here. Undisclosed, 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 won't disclose, undisclosed. That's kind of rad. Where, I mean, you know what they are. You gonna tell them?
I don't know.
Yeah, you do know what they are, Andy.
Not as far as you know.
So then moving from this kind of 6.8 that is a far superior bullet to even the 7.62, which you're giving this capability down to the individual infantryman.
Correct.
You're like, that Marine, that 11 Bravo, he's carrying a bullet that is overmatching every single one of his peers. If you look like the 7.62 by 3.9 or the 7.62 by 5.4, you're like a 148 grain on that 7.62 by 5.4, like the Czech overstock round that you see all over the world right now as they produce, I don't even know how many hundreds of millions of rounds. Like, this thing is smoking them. The standoff difference for that soldier over his peer is so significant. It's such an advantage, both in the weapons capability and the optic that's coming with it.
Yep.
Big step next, from here to here, 338 Norma Magnum. I remember when the 338 Lapua came on the market. I remember when Todd Hodnett showed up at range 37, and he had this short barrel 338. I mean, this thing was only like this big, and he standing offhand was like plink and steel at 1,000 meters, and every one of us was just standing there like, how do you do this?
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, oh, it's all the bullet. You know, it wasn't. Yeah. Like, he's an amazing shooter.
Sure, no doubt.
But heck, man, that bullet was a huge jump from what we had in the 308, and then military went on to the 300 Win Mag, which was an improvement. And now we're taking the muzzle velocity of a sniper round and throwing it into a machine gun.
Yep.
In the 338 Norma Magnum. So I want to go. I want to shoot some of these. I want to see how it, like the action and mechanically, see how some of this works. And then I think I don't know what's after that, man. I like, can I go home with it and sleep with it, because it's beautiful. All right, let's go test some. So, for most operations with the M2, you have 3 people. You're gonna have an ammo bearer, because that ammo is super heavy. You're gonna have the tripod carrier, and then you're going to have the weapon operator. And even for something as easy as loading, the how much the rounds weigh and the thing that holds the rounds in place end up taking more than 2 hands. There's a big difference with this. So what is this thing?
So it's a side stripper. So essentially, when that first round feeds in, if the spoon weren't here, it slides underneath, and that actually captures the round. So there's actually some tension there that's keeping that round there. So when you flick that feed tray cover up, slide that first round over it, that tension there holds it in place, so you can reach up over and then close that feed tray cover instead of wishing you had 3 hands instead of just 2.
That's incredible. Now on this spoon here, as an individual, so I can one, load it open bolt, and I can also load it closed bolt. Feeding this through, and then being able to pull this 1, 2 clicks, I'm loaded.
Correct, without ever having to open the feed tray cover, so which is a lot easier to do if you were moving from position to position.
So going from a 3-man machine gun team to 1 man is able to effectively do all of the operations by himself.
Sure, and then there's some others too. So with this one, we have the ability to charge. So essentially how you just loaded it. The bolt is forward. I set these rounds on top. I close my feed tray cover, and then because it's an open bolt machine gun, we would ride with that bolt closed on infill.
Yeah.
And then when we were about to hit the ground, you know you would have to place the legacy systems on fire, pull that bolt to the rear, place it back on safe, and then ride that bolt forward. Yep. Because if you attempted to charge that on safe, you would give yourself sear bind, which would jam it all up and take a little while to fix. So one of the big things we wanted to do was give that capability to the end user and make it more safe to essentially aircraft load on infill. So you can have that bolt forward, load it like you just did, keep it on safe, charge it, and it's gonna function. You're not gonna bind your sear.
So for everybody that's handled a legacy open bolt machine gun, when you would go to charge this would have to happen with the weapon on fire and then to ride the bolt back forward, there's no way for this weapon to be on safe. So a change is the mechanism inside of the trigger. Right now, it's currently on safe, and I can put it on fire, ride the bolt back forward. A lot of different things that I can do with being able to set the selector to safe.
Correct.
Man, that's awesome. Well, now I just want to shoot it.
Let's do it.
All right. Cool change addition is the way that this locks into place. So our old ammo, the bag would just attach in a variety of different and kind of scary ways. This has that really solid and that gives you confidence clip, just like a magazine. Kind of awesome. So you can also load this in a closed bolt configuration. This spoon, you just slide through and 2 clicks in, 1, 2, and we're good to go. And now weapons on safe. Here we go. God, that's such a cool feature. That is the 6.8 hybrid. Man, what a capability. All right, XM7, here we go. Loading, unloading, make sure the weapon is clear. Lock the bolt to the rear. 3-point check, looking good. Insert your magazine. Okay. You shoot that all day long and put a big, huge smile on your face. 6.8 millimeter hybrid ammo. It's kind of surreal. Wow, that this is already deployed and fielded to our forces. Man. Andy, before these were being fully fielded, I walked through the factory, and the first time that I had just gotten back from a trip overseas, and Tom Taylor walking me through, and I get to and he hands me the XM7, and it's in the moment of like being shipped, like they're packaging things up to send to our forces, and I was like, I was emotional. It was like a significant emotional event to realize that this is going to go to some 18, 19, 20-year-old that like raised his hand, said the oath of enlistment, and he's on his way overseas. So you and I are both holding weapons that provide freedom for our people here in the United States in ways that people just don't understand. The responsibility that the Pentagon has to make sure they're picking the right weapon, picking the right caliber, picking the right training. It is the best and the brightest in the world are trying to prevent another war from happening. And that really does come down to deterrence. These weapons are such an advantage. Our adversaries, our enemies are going to be so overmatched by this. Does that ever like hit you? Like,
oh, sure, it's personal on a level everywhere from, you know, you've talked to Mr. Cohen about it, you know, his legacy of service, and it filters down all the way through the engineers, R&D, test techs, all the way down to assembly. A third of the workforce here is military or law enforcement, so it's personal.
Yeah, personal for sure. I'm not gonna hide that it is a joy. I'm blessed. This is truly the best job in the world that we have, that you have, that we have had, being able to have that flag on our shoulder. Now having opportunities to experiment, play, test with things that could be coming, that have come, is I count it an absolute joy and a gift. So man, if you value and appreciate freedom, value and appreciate the process as well. The process for us to stay free really comes down to that individual being able to raise his hand to serve his country, his and her hand to serve their country after that oath of enlistment, and then have the right tool put in their hands to be able to do their job. If you have questions, drop it in the comment section, include it. Please subscribe, please share this. I want people to understand the process of selection to be awarded a contract, really the significant technological advantage that the XM7, the XM250, and the new machine gun have. Like these are giant steps forward for a capability and filling a capability gap for our forces. So Andy, thank you so much for your expertise and your passion for this, and thanks for letting me play with some of these weapons.
No worries, appreciate you coming by, Tim.
All right, stay safe, stay free.